All right. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. So before we move on, I would like to share the greatest news which we had received last week from ServiceNow. So right now we have become ITOM accredited partner from the ServiceNow standpoint. So what that means for us is we became the preferred partner for ServiceNow to recommend us to the customers of ServiceNow. So thanks to the entire team, the delivery team who has done a great job in all the SAM implementations we have done over the years.
So what we are trying to address with this webinar series, as you will see from the agenda as well, is when the ServiceNow is procured, or when ServiceNow as a platform is bought and brought within the your ecosystem, in your client, in your ecosystem within your IT, there is a certain expectation from the platform, because there is a business case which says, I want to get this value for the spend that I have budgeted for this, and this is the value I would like to get. So we all know the value that ServiceNow platform provides. Having said that, given the nature of the platform and associated use cases, there is always an expectation from business that are we meeting those expectations set in the front end with regards to value. So there has to be a continuous, and that is the question our customers are asking, is how do I continue to justify the value for the platform and be able to expand the footprint as well. So with that as a context, we have come up with this webinar series where we can help the community, having done this with our other customers, is how do you define the value for any functional area? Today we are starting with software asset management, but it can be ITSM, it can be ITOM or anything. How to define the value that can be justified to business, then how do you go about measuring that value, and then how do you communicate the value that got realized? So that's the entire essence for this webinar. So it is different in a way that not only you will take away from this webinar as what SAM is all about and where you can use software asset management, how you can use it, but more importantly, do you have enough justification for software asset management to be either brought into your ecosystem, or if you already have it, can you continue to justify that investment and then add additional use cases? So that's the context. With that context, at a short agenda, I won't take much time on talking about who we are, which is abhra, and we'll share, our firm details, etc. However, we'll jump right into the meat of the webinar, which is mostly focused on ServiceNow platform value. So who we are abhra. Abhra is a, automation company. We have been in the business for last 10+ years. And over the years, different platforms that we developed, we also felt the need that there were quite a few SaaS platforms were coming up in the market, and we became partner with ServiceNow, which we, in the beginning, I think about 2015 or so, we saw tremendous potential with this platform, not just in the ITSM area, but as a platform of platforms. And sure enough, our, what we thought at that time turned out to be true. In last 5 years journey, we have seen the platform grow as well as our customer base grow. So we are all things ServiceNow. That's who we are. At the heart of it, we are a platform engineering company. We have our own products and few products that have been, acquired by bigger firms as well. So our DNA is essentially engineering. So most, all of our team members back globally are all engineers and just focused on the platform's value and how we can take the SaaS value back to our customer. And in doing so, we also have different engagement models for our customer, and we strongly believe in giving our knowledge back to the community. And that's where we have Abhra Labs as our unique IP incubator that we partner with our customer base as well as community, and the freemium engagement model wherein we are able to share things with our customers even before they spend anything with us, because we want them to be set up right in their journey, in automation journey, and then we want to make sure that their investment in the long term are realized. So, we are global. So we are based in US as well as in India. And there is office, and the customer base is, footprint is all across, Europe as well as US and in India, Australia. So particularly focused on ServiceNow. So ServiceNow is one business line for us, and our product engineering is another one, where we have our own platforms, focused on healthcare as well as financial industry. So we are a ServiceNow partner, premier partner at that. And in last 5 years, we have done multiple implementations. You see the numbers on the slide. I will not be repeating those for you, but enough to say that we have worked with a company of size $100 million in revenue to a size, $500 billion in revenue. So we have worked with multiple client base across the board, and we understand what a small firm needs with ServiceNow investment, and we also understand what a large complex organization want to do with ServiceNow as a platform. So we have seen both sides, and that's why we bring a different and unique perspective in the marketplace. And again, all the bells and whistles that you need to be a premier partner, we have all of them, whether it is certified partners and our go-to-market tools and techniques and process and accelerators, procedures, etc. So those are all there. But what's different is our approach in helping customer implement ServiceNow and also extend ServiceNow down the line. The approach that we use is, before even we get started on a project or anything, any platform related work, we work with the customer to define a proof of concept. And that's where we invest a lot of time from our center of excellence, which is globally located. And we want to make sure that the POC not only helps the customer visualize what they want to get out of the value, investment in the platform, but also help us understand them. Because what we have seen is these are short-term projects. So these can be 3 months, 6 months. So unless there is a synergy between our team and the customer team, getting the requirements, making sure that customer is able to visualize what they want to get, cannot be just accomplished by showing up on day one. So that's why our team builds that relationship with our customer through proof of concept, so that we are aligned on both ends and we are able to get the quick value to market. So that's where we invest with our customer and our prospect, I should say, even before they become our customers. So footprint-wise, in last 5 years, as I mentioned, we have focused on various functional areas. As most of the people who started 5 years ago, we started with ITSM, and that's where our core offering was. But then as platform grew, we grew. When platform invested into discovery, CMDB, and ITOM, and associated functions, we also developed capabilities there. And then as platform went into IT asset management, we made investment. We got helped customers accomplish their goals in that journey. And like Suresh said, we just recently became accredited partner from ServiceNow side on ITOM, IT asset management, where software asset management is one piece of it. And then last 2 years, we have been focusing on GRC, SecOps, and various other functions that have come about. So that's who we are. So abhra, just a key takeaway for you, abhra is an automation company focused on ServiceNow and other platforms that we develop. And within ServiceNow ecosystem, we have a wide range of capabilities across all the functional areas. And of course, our approach with the customer, whether you are a 100 million revenue or 500 billion revenue, doesn't matter. Our approach is tailored to each and every customer, wherein we make investment upfront. So one question I get asked is, why SaaS? And of course, whoever is hearing this webinar and who are all on this webinar today, that question probably comes about, but it has become very intuitive because everybody talks about SaaS. Everybody says SaaS is the way to go. So it's a natural instinct that we invest in SaaS because that's what we see every day. But if you really look at the SaaS's real value, besides the cost is definitely the one parameter everybody would want, and whether cost being an operational expense rather than a capital expense, and able to grow as the business grows, and all those unique parameters around the cloud platform. The biggest thing that we see SaaS offering is quickest value, time to market value. So the SaaS provides you to get to market quickly with any automation requirement, with any need within a functional area that you are trying to implement, IT on top of that. In the old days, you had to gather requirements, build the product, then implement, then train and all that. Then came packaged ERPs where you had half of it already ready, but you had to still bring into your infrastructure, implement it, make sure that install it the right way, and then you go to market. Go to market in the sense, go to your community. With SaaS, it is the quickest in the sense that we see our customers receiving value as quickly as 6 weeks all the way to 3 months, and you can start to use the platform and use to justify value. So that is software as a service platform. But within SaaS community, ServiceNow excels. What we have seen is ServiceNow's quickest path to value definitely exceeds many of the platforms today in the market, who they call quote unquote SaaS. And we have seen that repeatedly. And this webinar, you will see, in one particular instance, how that value got justified so quickly. And of course, ServiceNow has been continuously evolving its platform, as you may be aware. And people who are new to ServiceNow releases, a new release every 6 months. You get 2 releases a year, and each release is not just the incremental release. Many a times there is a lot of feature functionality that comes in every release. It may be one product at a time or multiple products and all that. So just visual for you to see, what has happened so far on a ServiceNow platform with, from Jakarta all the way to Paris today. And of course, one of the things that ServiceNow also excels at with regards to the platform and platform value is the ability to quickly allow our customers to develop new custom applications. So that has been a great, success in the ecosystem. So not only you can quickly develop applications, but also there is a platform available for you to publish for bigger community as well. So that's where ServiceNow excels. And I'll just talk a little bit about ServiceNow. It's a ServiceNow slide. Next one, for folks who are not aware of what ServiceNow offers. So ServiceNow has, as I said, is a platform of platforms, and it is very much true for digital transformation. And we have seen many customers tell us during these tough times of COVID that how this platform has helped them do many things by having remote workforce enablement, by tracking some of the COVID related, items, and even ability to procure things quickly in an IT world, and be able to manage workflows around HR, customer, IT very quickly. So come up with that new functionality. So we strongly believe when ServiceNow says that it's a platform of platform, for sure, because not only it can provide you the use cases that come out of the box, which can be around IT, which can be around, customer base, your external customer base, or which can be around HR, internal function, GRC, and all that. You have an ability to even write your own use case on top of the platform very quickly. And, and then also it comes very close to the codeless platform, a low code platform. So, most of it is configurable, and it's also provides you an ability to keep on getting the new features with every upgrade. So, and one more thing ServiceNow also excels at is the ability to integrate with your other platforms. So you may have, Workday or Salesforce or even Rapid7 if I go on SecOps and all. So there is an immense ability to, integrate with that and truly become IT system of record in that sense. That you can have the IT related data at one place and be able to orchestrate different things. So with that, I will now pass it on to Karthik, who can talk about software asset management and what we see in SAM world from a value standpoint. Karthik.
So taking on from where Kailash has left, talking about SAM again. We all know, again, ServiceNow SAM application provides for ability to track, evaluate, and manage software licenses. It does come with a lot of out-of-the-box features which are very rich in its capability. And in this particular slide, we try to summarize, what SAM is, right? Because predominantly we want to cover our point of view on how do you realize value. But before we do that, just a quick introduction of ServiceNow SAM. And again, talking about its features. Call out ones, of course, are being its powerful capability in reporting and dashboard. From licensing standpoint, its ability to import entitlements, and coming to discovery normalization. Again, I think that's one of the most powerful feature in the ServiceNow SAM application, where it helps and saves a ton of time in normalizing a publisher, a product, and a version, eventually helping you in your reconciliation and optimization thereof, right? So needless to say, it comes with a lot of power-packed, feature-rich features right out of the box. And another salient feature, as you could see, just being launched in Kingston version in about Jan 2018 to today, in the Paris version of about September 2020, the product has gone tremendous change and have been added with a lot of capabilities over the releases. The initial version was more about 4 primary vendors in terms of IBM, VMware, and Microsoft, and the one. Now in Paris, I mean, if you come down to Paris now all the way, they have added more and more publishers over the course of its releases. They've added capabilities for SaaS, license management through their acquisitions of VendorHawk and other SaaS management tools. And even within each of those publishers added more license metrics that could be calculated for reconciliations right out of the box. So all in all, again, from a platform and application standpoint, ServiceNow comes with feature-rich capabilities. Ultimately, in providing the value of finding out, what software do you own, and are you buying what you need, and ultimately are you using what you have, right? So this much, again, more or less, if you've been accustomed to ServiceNow, you must be already aware of this. But the bigger question we wanted to address is, this is all great features. How do we get the value out of it? And that's what we want to address in the next slide. So before I do that, I would want to introduce our value framework, which will help us in firstly defining, because what is not defined and measured can't be realized. So we start by first introducing the framework, which talks about value definition, value measurement, and realization. And in this particular slide, we are doing a deep dive of our value definition aspect of the framework, wherein, again, keep focusing narrowly on SAM. To the matter, as you will see in the rest of the series as well, ultimately, from a value definition standpoint, through our past several implementations and market research and so on and so forth, they could all be tied back to 4 key towers, right? Ultimately, the value is measured through financial gain or cost avoidance when it comes to financial for the matter, operational excellence, compliance as it relates to SAM and being compliant with your licenses and your vendors. And last but not the least, brand reputation, which is also crucial, where if you're audited and you have been found to be overusing, then it kind of hurts your brand reputation in ways, right? So from a definition standpoint, we try to bring it back into all of these 4 towers of value. And of course, for the value that you would define for each of the implementation would depend upon your organization and what where you are with regards to your implementations, or for that matter, as you as an organization are, right? So down below, we have listed down some of the triggers or events that would tie back to, or which would help you in defining what value you will want to accomplish or achieve with your implementation or the platform that you have purchased, and particularly SAM in this case, right? So again, tying back to some of the events and the value of financial gain, it could be that there are some upcoming budget cuts, and you're looking to save some costs in harvesting some licenses, or stop spending on some software which is not being used. And also there could be that some of the software licenses coming for renewals, and you would again want to look for opportunities where you could gain financial value. And some of the other more triggers which could be helping for financial include your data center consolidation or workforce new onboardings, offboardings, and mergers and acquisitions, so on and so forth, right? So those are some of the triggers where you could tie back to your value of financial gain. And likewise, from an operational standpoint, we do have things like could be addressing complex license issues, or looking at your process of how you're requesting your software or installing or uninstalling, and see how we can improvise that experience for your users, for your operations team. So those could be some of those triggers, again, from an operational excellence value standpoint, and compliance from an audit standpoint, and from a brand, again, making sure you're compliant, and even from a security standpoint, most of your software are patched and are current, and so on and so forth, right? Again, how you define and what value you would define for your project would be very unique to your implementation. This is just a framework to give you some broad pointers of what could be the value definitions in a SAM implementation as you begin your journey with, right? But down the line in this presentation, we'll talk about how we did define for one of the implementations that we did, and so on and so forth, and measure and realized. Moving on, Suresh. So once you set forth by defining right? The value that you would expect from this implementation. Then second thing that we talk about in our framework is how do you measure that value, right? Of course, to measure that value, you need to have certain metrics, and the metrics again could be enterprise level metrics, could be functional or operational, but will ultimately tie back to your value definitions that you have given up or you would come up with in your implementation. So in this case, since we define our value to be coming in the 4 towers of finance, operational excellence, and compliance and brand reputation, if you look at the finance metrics here, they tie back to the value definition of our financial gain, or in some cases, cost avoidance as well, right? Some of the metrics there, as you can see, are true up cost, the software spend, potential savings, and over licensed amount, so on and so forth. Again, we will share the deck, so I wouldn't want to read to each metric. But the point being, there are enough metrics that would tie back to your individual value definition that you've given. Likewise, moving on the operational metric standpoint, which would tie back to your operational excellence value definition, we could have metrics around request fulfillment. What is the time it is taking to fulfill now, vis-a-vis after your implementation, and what value you are trying to realize from thereof, right? And that could be true for your removal as well as how much time it takes for you to create your entitlements or run reconciliations and so on and so forth. And last but not the least, from your compliance and brand reputation standpoint, the metrics could be in terms of licensed installs, unlicensed installs, unused licenses, and so on and so forth, right? Again, with those 2 slides, our intention is to set a broad framework and help in defining some value as well as the metrics that you would do. In the next slide, Suresh, if you can go to the next one, we will be talking more about how we could realize that value. And again, as they say, Rome is not built in a day. So is our approach, where we strongly recommend a phased approach and journey towards the SAM implementation or program, I would call it, right? Wherein, because as we called out earlier in the presentation, ServiceNow does offer a lot of features and capabilities as it relates to SAM, right? And this picture is trying to summarize maybe at best of what 80% or 90% of its capability. And even that, as you could see, we had broken down that a lot of the processes that it is going to provide into 3 different phases. So just to deep a little more into this particular slide, we have like 3 phases. The first phase is what we highlighted in phase 1, the green, and it starts at the bottommost of the slide, where this phase, I would call it as a foundation builder, right? And we need that to be doing any value down the line. And when we talk about foundation builder, there are essentially two aspects that we're doing in this particular phase. The first one is, of course, finding out what is your usage, right? Which is where you would integrate with any of your discovery sources. So in this case, we talked about an integration with JAMF for discovering your iOS discovery, and an SCCM integration for your Windows discovery, and it could be IBM's ILMT for IBM usage and so on and so forth. But the idea being having an integration with several discovery tools to bring in all the raw data, because each of those tools in how they discover and calculate or identify and capture the data is different, it's unique, and you want to bring them all into ServiceNow, which is where it's again feature or most powerful capability of normalization kicks in and gets you a clean set of discovery models, which is nothing but a high-level summary of the key software products or models that you've been using. So that's one aspect of phase 1, where you're identifying what is the software usage or the footprint that you have in your organization. And on the other hand, into the same phase, when we have what we are using, what you own is imported into the system through something called as creating software entitlements in ServiceNow, which in turn, again, thanks to its robust normalization library as well as product library, it helps in automatic creation of software model. And again, a software model being a specific version of a product and model and its version, right? Edition. So it helps you in creating those models based on what entitlements you own. And now having both the sides of the coin in terms of what you own and what you use, in this phase, you could also run your reconciliation. And that's where you will get a first level or first cut off data of where you stand with regards to compliance. And so that is what like I said, we call it as a foundation builder phase, wherein we bring all the data that you use and the data that you own and run reconciliation. And there itself, you could get some powerful capabilities like reporting of what you own, what you use, compliance, where do you stand. And within each of that, of course, if you think about it, there are a lot of vendors, there are specific models. Once you run the first set of reconciliation, you could then be focusing on individual results of the models and the products and work on, remediation of either over or under usage, right? So that is phase one for you. Having done phase one, in phase two, what we propose or recommend is now that you've seen the reconciliation result, what's the best use of, how do you make the best use of those results, right? In terms of remediating the compliance positions. Now that could be in terms of removing unlicensed software, reclaiming some of the software rights, or where needed, raise tickets to get more of the entitlements because you're using it and you don't have those entitlements left. And here again, as you could see, if you were to remove unlicensed software, that's where you're uninstall as an action, and that's where you could be automating that phase. And there again, you would see a lot of value, which we will show you how we realized in the next slide. But phase two essentially is more remediation phase. Right after your foundation building, what do you do with that results is what we focused on our phase two. And in phase three, what we propose or what we're breaking down as phase three is, okay, now that you have your, from a department standpoint, from a function standpoint, you have your house in order where you have a system of record for your entitlements, for your usage, and you have ways and mechanisms and processes for your remediation. You open it up for your audience, right? Which is your end users, your business users, for them to come in and make a request, right? So you publish your software models right out there, and they will all be tied back to your respective entitlements, your remediation rules, reclamation rules, so that when somebody makes a request, it actually checks whether you have the right entitlement, and then it approves for the request to go further or not, or in some cases go to procurement and get the entitlement before you allocate, right? So that's where again a lot of automation can be brought in, and some value could be realized. So that is where again, this is out of all the capability, maybe about 80%. There's still aspects like contract management and procurement, which are all additional use cases, and we'll talk about that also sooner or later. But our, again, thought process and point of view has been that we recommend a roadmap-based approach, wherein you get incremental value from each phase, and you set up the platform and the program for value down the line and continuous value. So far, we have helped you in talking mostly in theory about the platform ServiceNow, SAM as a capabilities of SAM, and defining our value framework of value definition, measurement, and realization. Here in this slide, we want to take a real example of what we have done or how we have realized that value for one of our big customers, which is a large insurance company based out of Columbus, Ohio. And we have done this implementation for them, and we've completed phase 1 and 2 for them. So think about the value framework that we just talked about, right? So before I talk about what value we realized, so we defined value. So in this case, they wanted to focus more upon operational excellence as a value. And so before we say within operational excellence, so what about it? In today, when they make a request for software, installation of a new software request, the steps it involves or the time it takes is the operation of the process that I'm talking about. And how we have improved that particular process or operation is what this slide talks about. And how we are measuring that. So firstly, if you look at the before or the manual process, prior to the implementation, their process involved when somebody used to come in and make a request in the portal, full service portal, which used to go to their line manager for approval. And down below the flowchart, you could also see a cycle time chart, which is where how we, with a course of 30 to 50, a good enough sample size of number of records, we were able to bring an average time it used to take for each of the steps. So that is how we came up with this cycle time flowchart down below the flowchart. So as you can see, once a request has been raised and submitted, typically for the line manager approval to happen, there was an 8-hour delay on an average. Looked at over 100 of other requests that have been done in the past, before the line manager actually used to come in and make the approval, which is barely a less than 5-minute task. But there in itself, there is some 8 hours to 8 time delay. Post which, once the line manager approves, it goes to the enterprise SAM management team. And what they used to do is they used to check whether do we have an entitlement or not, right? And again, the wait time before the SAM analyst used to come and do the job was about 11.5 to 12 hours before they typically, once a request comes in and before they actually act on it. And the task itself, of course, they had to manually go in and check in their record Excel sheets, which are there in several places. And then they find out, okay, we have the entitlement, so we can go ahead. So they approved it 15 minutes as an average time. Then once again, that's done, the task is to be created for a desktop team to finally go ahead and install the software. And needless to say, the wait time here is because they're already crowded with a lot of their relevant support and so on and so forth. The wait time there has been about 16 hours, as you could see in the bottom of the chart. And the task itself to install was 1 hour, depending upon build and deploy and so on and so forth. And all in all, we could see there was like 38 hours process, or it used to take for a fulfillment of a software install request, right? So that is, again, so from a definition standpoint, operational excellence. So how do we improvise this, right? From measurement standpoint, we had clear metrics in terms of how much time and what are the various teams working on that, and what is the time that they're taking to work on this particular request. So we have done the phase 1 and phase 2 implementations for them. In fact, phase 3, which is the catalog as well, which is where we first built the entitlement system of record. We brought in all the entitlements. We have then run discovery tools and found out what is being used. And ultimately, we also had an automation for installation through SCCM orchestration, and tied it back all the way back to service catalog, like I just talked about in the previous slide in my phase 1, 2, and 3 section. So having done all of that post implementation, so the change is, of course, not all installations could have been automated, because for each of them you have to build systems. So there have been 2 processes. Sometimes it's automatic installation and some still manual. In the auto installation case, again, this after post implementation, 3 months of data, we compared again. And from the process standpoint, as you could see, there's still the line manager approval, which we could not evolve because it's a must to have. So that part of the 8 hours still remained. And then the line manager had to approve for 5 minutes. But then the significant thing, if you see, is if the line manager approved it, there's still this talk to ESAM team. But we have altogether avoided the ESAM step now in this new process. Yes, the chart doesn't depict that, but hence you would see by just removing that ESAM team, right? Because earlier what the ESAM team used to do was check for entitlements, but now with entitlement record being created within ServiceNow, it no longer needed for the task to be going to ESAM team, but it was checking the entitlement directly within the system. So to that extent, the whole wait time of 11.5 hours is eliminated, the task of 15 minutes is eliminated, and it just directly goes to, in this case, since it's an auto install, it is not even waiting for any desktop support team engineer to come in for 16 hours, but the automatic installation time of just 15 minutes, right? So the bulk of the time in the wait times for your ESAM team or the desktop support team, and the time it takes for the ESAM and the desktop team, another hour and 15 minutes, all of that has been reduced, and end goal being in less than 9 hours since the request has been made, again, bulk of which is going into your line manager approval and wait time of 8 hours, we were able to finish this process. And as you can see, from 38 hours, we brought it down all the way to 9 hours, which is like 70% of reduction as far as auto installation is concerned. And it's not just about the time there. Imagine or think about all the experience, the user experience, who's waiting for 38 hours to get his software that he's made request to. Now he's able to get it much, much more sooner. Think about the time that is saved for the ESAM team, who's now no longer looking at different charts and doing it. The time is freed up to do something else. And so is for your desktop support team, which is going to be doing. So if you think about that and the time saved and put a dollar value to that, that also ties back to your financial gain or cost avoided thereof, right? And just extending on the same thought and the thought process, you would see for the manual process where we had to steal the desktop support team, it still came down to 16 hours, which is 50% or 60% time savings there as well, right? So this is again applying our value framework, defining the value, which used to be the operational excellence of financial gain, and then measuring that in detail and foolproof manner with the sample size and data that is statistically viable and correct, and then showing the value back to the business team and the owners. And that's where when we talk about in this series, business needed to justify the investment. This is how they were able to justify the investment that they made in SAM as a product and implementing it the right way. In terms of some of the other metrics and value, finance metrics and financial gain, of course, the total true up cost based on, this is something from out of the box reporting and dashboard based on what you're using versus what you're spending and so on and so forth, and the current subscription spend. And likewise, some other quantitative metrics from a compliance standpoint, what are the publishers that are out of compliance or what are the products that are out of compliance. And or again, this is a sample data, not exactly this, but the point being, once you set forth your definition and what you're going to measure, the platform provides you the capability to measure them, right? Either out of the box, in this case, like the financial metrics or the quantitative metrics, or things like we have done for the operational excess, for the operational excellence in terms of the cycle time of the process or the time saved for individual teams, right? So that is, again, I hope this was great value with regards to the value framework and how we realize to some of the customer. The last slide before we open up for the Q&A and any additional topic is, so once you've done your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and you realize some value, what are some of the other incremental value and other incremental use cases that you could use from SAM itself, right? And again, this is tying back to how ServiceNow is coming up with new features every single release. So there's always incremental value that you could get from each release. And some of those capabilities include spend detection and optimization, wherein they're talking about you. Now you don't even have to bring in entitlements. If you have to collect all the entitlement first and import, which itself could be tedious task, then you directly dump in your finance data, raw data, and ServiceNow itself could be, reading and picking up the data of relevant software spend and identify from there, where your spend is going and teeing them back with entitlements or usage and so on and so forth, right? So there's one in terms of spend detection and optimization, and deployment and remediation. Again, each year when they come up with new release, there's a lot of new spokes, new integrations, new builds that are coming out of the box, so which will help you in continuously automating a lot of installations, not just a few products and models, but help you in making those automatic bundles for for installations. Likewise, license change protection. Again, being back to your ITSM processes, if there's any major deployment, changes to your infrastructure, move to cloud, whatever that be, the change itself of how it is impacting your infrastructure and what does it mean from your software license spend standpoint, that's something that it auto calculates and lets you know that this is the position that you are prior to this change, and this is what it will come to when the change is implemented, which is again tremendous value in planning for the software aspect of the particular implementation. Somebody is not tracking that per se. And even if you do, it's a validation at that. Likewise, some of the other stuff of the model lifecycle, license contracts, again, tying back to your contracts and procurement management, and all the way, the process can start from right from procurement, and then procurement systems and teams knowing what entitlements we already have or we don't, and giving that number and volume for them to negotiate and get the life contract and so on and so forth. All in all, I think the capabilities, with each incremental release, the capabilities are only increasing. ServiceNow SAM is identified as a market leader on Gartner summary, and rightly so, because of all the features, as you could see. And ultimately, it is what you make out of the platform through your implementations and the right implementation path. And hope you're able to add the value through that framework that we have presented.
I think, for the audience, as Karthik mentioned, not only the platform adds value, but also within the platform, software asset management has come a long way. And it has started to now provide real-time value to our customer base, so much so that Fortune 500 customer base is now using it. Even during the fourth quarter budget cycles, we have seen many customers just relying on SAM to be able to look at the spend, see what they can do for the coming year, how they want to optimize the spend, or even add new licenses from other publishers. So thanks, Karthik, for walking through the journey. And again, the key takeaways from the webinar standpoint is, the software asset management has come a long way from a journey standpoint, maturity standpoint, and the value is now real. People have come back to us and told us that this is where we saw value, this is how we justified it. And moreover, the number 3 is people are now finding different use cases, not just about am I compliant or what's my spend, but also can I automate during COVID time to a degree that I know my license base what Karthik was talking about as a use case, and I know where my, which user wants it and so on and so forth, and then automatically deploy that license or that reclaim the license. So there are multiple use cases. So that's the third key takeaway for you. Then the fourth one, of course, from abhra standpoint, we recommend that you look at software asset management as a roadmap based journey, because one thing we haven't told you is the value that Karthik talked about has been justified by customer in just short time frame of 10 weeks. So this was an end-to-end effort in 10 weeks, and they were able to see this much value. So that's again a key takeaway, that within 10 weeks, you can start to see some value. And again, you can go further, in months and get some additional use cases implemented. So with that, I will pause here. And Suresh, if there is any question from the audience, then we'll be more than happy to take it.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions we have here, Suresh, is how much time does it take for each phase typically? So again, just to answer that question, it depends with each implementation, each journey, each customer's journey where you are. Having said that, for each of the phases, as Kailash has talked about, our usual has been that within 6 weeks to 9 weeks, we're able to complete each of those individual phases, be it the foundation builder, be it the catalog, publishing the catalog items, as well as remediations and so on and so forth. And put it together as a full program, I think under 12 weeks, we can get much more of this implementation done.
I think I would like to share one of my personal experiences when Karthik was really talking about value definition slide. So I saw something interesting there, application rationalization. 6 years back when I was working with one of the clients in UK, so there was a rationalization project going on. I think I think it was predominantly divided into 3 different parts, like application rationalization, and then infrastructure rationalization, and contract rationalization. So effectively, I mean, the whole engagement has gone for 4 months. And another thing is that in those 4 months, what I mean, we had to do was getting all the bunch of Excel sheets from all different departments to collect the whole software applications data in the estate. And again, finally, we were ended up doing one final sheet. So again, we were not guaranteed there whether really that final Excel sheet was able to maintain or control going forward. So I think now I really feel that we would have these kind of tools, I think 6 months, 6 years back when I was really working on that project.
From the audience, I think Jamie wants to know, when you talked about the use case study, was that company already deploying their software via SCCM, or were they doing it manually? Karthik, you want to take that?
Yes. So they were not deploying via SCCM when we went in. They had collections, and we worked with their SCCM engineer to build some of those collections and use some of the spokes from ServiceNow to deploy them via SCCM. I think it was along with this initiative parallelly that was also tried, tested, and deployed simultaneously.
So there is one more question, Karthik, with regards to software asset management. Where ServiceNow software asset management differentiate itself with some of the other platforms? I won't name them, but a few of the ones that are already in market. How does SAM provides that value, which somebody would have difficulty if they were to use software asset management from something else versus what ServiceNow does on discovery or anything else?
Yeah, I think the primary differentiator is, as you called out earlier, platform of platforms, right? Wherein I think the true real value is it coming because the ITSM is on ServiceNow. Like I said, the desktop support team is on ServiceNow in the example that I gave earlier, wherein the task is being created and then assigned to them, which is in a typical world, it's an ITSM task giving. Even the change, for example, is happening in an ITSM world, but the fact that ITSM and SAM is coexisting gives that synergies, and not just on just by SAM itself, but how it is influencing other application areas, be it ITSM, be it ITBM, wherein Suresh talked about portfolio rationalization or new deployments and changes and what is coming in the future demand and outlook. So all of this again ties back to that. I think that's the biggest differentiator, wherein the value is not just by the mere capability of SAM itself, but how it ties back with the larger platform and it being a platform to that extent. And two, of course, as they go along, they've been continuously building upon the features and whatever industry leading features and capabilities are, they are there today with ServiceNow, and they take both direct and indirect route in terms of acquisitions and getting those capabilities. And third, I would say, to summarize on that, would be in its SaaS capabilities. I think it's one of the richest, and I think it ties back to one of the other questions we have. How useful is it from a SaaS context? Again, with most of this SaaS providers having their own portals, the way ServiceNow's SaaS collections and integrations work, it gets the fetches the data from them in real time or however you want to get them in, and works out of that data. So even from a SaaS standpoint, out of the box, it comes with this Office 365 or Citrix and Adobe Creative Cloud and so on and so forth. And the support for that is also increasing with each release. So that's where I think in multiple fronts, they've been creating those moats with the competition and staying more relevant and competitive, and as Gartner pointed out, as a leader.
Very good.
Thanks a lot, guys, for joining this webinar today. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Thanks a lot once again. Have a great day.